Remember in Spider-Man No Way Home, when Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man stepped out of the portal and audiences went apeshit crazy over it? And suddenly people were pressing for a third Amazing Spider-Man movie, completely forgetting how bad and soulless those films were because they were made as nothing more than a cheap land grab intended to hang on to the character rights. And that the only reason we even got No Way Home in the first place was because Sony had fucked up the character so much that they were forced to hand him back to his original owners to try and repair his cinematic reputation and build up some goodwill again? Also, Sony could go back to their original plan and desperately try to set up their own cinematic universe based around the one character that they owned that they could shamelessly exploit. Well, welcome to the consequences of your own actions.
I should have died years ago. Why am I still here if not to fix this? I have a rare blood disease, and I'm running out of time. This could be my last chance.
You're up to something. What is it?
That's not exactly legal.
I don't want to see you get hurt more than you already have.
This would be a cure.
Jared Leto, yeah him, plays Dr. Michael Morbius, a man who... you know what? No one gives a fuck. No one gave a fuck in the comics, they obviously didn't give a shit when they were writing the script, and even less people care for the movie. Hell, this movie has been delayed for over 2 years and no one noticed. For those who don't know, Morbius is a science vampire, having injected himself with vampire bat DNA and developing abilities. As far as origins go, this isn't the worst I've ever heard. I mean, it's not that removed from being bitten by a radioactive spider, but it is also up there with injecting yourself with mongoose DNA and developing super speed. That's an actual thing, by the way, go look it up. I'd like to narrow down exactly what abilities he does gain, but he seems to suffer from the same problem Superman had in the comic books in the 50s, with his power set simply being whatever the fuck I want. For example, he develops echolocation, which, okay, yeah, that's a bad thing. That makes sense. But that quickly turns into super hearing, which turns into GPS tracking, which I think also somehow enables him to fly? Oh, and then he learns to control bats to the point that he does some sort of Dragon Ball Kamehameha effect with them. The character of Morbius is written pretty thin. You know, brilliant but arrogant and everybody acts like he's charming. Leto plays the character pretty straight, which is much more subdued than I'm used to from the guy. I've got to be honest, Leto really isn't as good of an actor as he seems to think he is. And I've never seen a performance of his that was good enough to justify the dick behaviour he always has on set while in character. You know, there's method, and then there's just being an asshole. Matt Smith plays Morbius's childhood friend, Milo, who also suffers from the same blood disease. He also has more of a temper and a secret darker streak. Yeah, you see where this is going. I'll give Matt credit because he uses that manic Doctor Who energy of his to give his two-dimensional villain turn at least some personality. But his bad guy is so by the book you can almost imagine his script looking like Lego instructions. Adira Hajona is cast as the girl. Because movies like this need a girl, and she is quite competent as the girl. But that old Bechdel test would fail pretty miserably on this one, as she seems to have no point other than other characters' motivation. Jared Harris does perfectly fine playing the boy's doctor. There's nothing there to work with, so he doesn't do any work with it. And And one of the Fast and Furious regulars plays a cop, who feels like they just copy and pasted from the big book of character cliches to use as a placeholder, then forgot to go back later and actually write in a character. Nothing happens in this movie. I honestly got to a point where I couldn't predict how the film was going to end simply because almost nothing had been set up enough to warrant a payoff. The CG makeup effects used to transform him aren't too bad sometimes, but mostly they just look like someone was following an Andrew Kramer tutorial. That ink effect that is his vampire ability, ghost trail, or whatever the hell it is, just doesn't seem to make any sense other than it being pretty. And don't get me started on the big CG ending, which just flashed back and forth between Zack Snyder style slow motion shots and the visual equivalent of spinning a coloured cloth in front of a camera lens. You know, I think the studio knew that this was going to be dead on arrival even when they released the first trailer over 2 years ago. The desperation of them trying to ride the coattails of the Spider-Man movies was so heavy, it was almost a plot. From the dialogue hinting at the Venom movies, the image of Morbius walking past the Spider-Man poster, a scene which isn't in the movie by the way, and putting Michael Keaton's Vulture character in the trailer when he doesn't even show up until the mid-credits scene. Oh, and trying not to get too spoilery, but those two scenes were obviously heavily rejigged to incorporate the ending of No Way Home, so they suddenly make no sense. Vulture, who seems to be set up as the Nick Fury of the Sinister Six, name drops Spider-Man to Morbius while he's making his "Dear God, we're making sequels to this" pitch. Morbius would have no idea who the hell Spider-Man even is, as he doesn't exist in this world. Oh God. I really hope this isn't the world they introduce a live-action Miles Morales to. Especially not one who is connected to the Into the Spider-Verse version, which is the only thing that Sony has gotten right since Raimi's Spider-Man 2. You know, this movie is almost the poster child for the problem that plagues a lot of cinematic releases we get nowadays. In the fact that it is nothing. There's no real story to follow. There's no real characters you can get behind. There's no major action sequences that are worth forking out the fees to see it in a cinema. At least the Venom movies had Tom Hardy and some laugh-out-loud moments that made sitting through them almost worthwhile. This movie just feels pointless. Even feeling some disappointment coming out of the cinema would have been something. At this point, I really do wish that Sony would just quit. Not just Spider-Man, but movies in general. I mean, they don't want to be there, so why do they keep doing this to themselves and us? Seriously, call it a day. Sell off the properties and close up shop. Marvel can finally get back Spider-Man and start doing things right again. Maybe Universal could do a crossover between its monster franchises and the Men in Black. And if New Line picks up the Ghostbusters franchise, maybe we can finally get that legitimate big screen version of Freddy vs. Ghostbusters we've all been wanting. Just as long as they stop doing these shitty, soulless Spider-Man villain Oh, for fuck's sake!